One wrong step could make the whole town is fall. But sometimes you only need one step to bring down the entire game till the end.
Ma'am, berikut adalah update terbaru dari El Paso yang baru saja masuk. Tempat penampungan beroperasi dengan kapasitas 220%. Anak-anak tidur di lantai. 13 agen telah mengajukan permintaan resmi untuk dipindahkan. Mereka sangat-sangat kelelahan, ma'am. Jumlah unaccompanied minors naik 41% dibanding bulan lalu. Rata-rata masa penahanan kini 7 hari, 2 kali lipat dari rata tahun 2016. Oh, dan masyarakat mulai bergerak. Telepon ke media lokal melonjak. Juga ada beberapa protes di Del Rio, McAllen, bahkan Tucson. Fair juga udah menyiarkan kampanye daring, This is Irfan's Border Breakdown. Mereka menyebut hal ini adalah titik runtuh pemerintahan.
Of course they are. Number like stick, don't whisper. They scream, tapi masyarakat Washington cuma aware kalau udah jadi headline. Ambil data dari El Paso, McAllen, dan Tucson, saya mau semua data langsung dari lapangan. Current, law, and unfiltered. I'm not waiting for a photo PR. If Washington wants to play the blame game, they'll be late to the field. If no one else will act, then let them react to me. El Paso penuh sesak. Anak-anak tidur di lantai yang dingin, staf mereka kelelahan. Dan Gedung Putih memanggil saya. Sekarang, Fair pasti akan marah. Mereka selalu marah tiap lihat kebijakan manusiawi mengganggu ilusi keamanan mereka. Tapi tentunya ya mereka nggak pernah ada di sana sih. Mereka nggak benar-benar dengar anak umur 9 tahun berbisik. Aku belum pernah lihat kakakku selama bertahun-tahun. Tomorrow they will talk about the protocol. And I will talk about the consequences. If this country falls because we choose compassion, then let the blame start with me.
Jika mereka tahu tentang ini, itu akan menimbulkan masalah besar untuk Melvi. Aku nggak perlu untuk mengekspos semuanya, just drop a little bit.
authorities over border control. CBS's Camilo Montoya Galvez is there. The Texas National Guard is blocking federal agents from patrolling this section of the U.S.-Mexico border near Eagle Pass. As you can see, it has been fortified with razor and concertina wire.
There are videos from a winter group in Texas going viral. Overcrowded shelters, kids on the floor, border operations are overwhelmed. Hashtag trending.
Yeah, where's humanity?
Where is humanity? Pretty sure it's in the mall.
I did.
Typical. One emotional clip. Suddenly it's all the administration's failure.
But there's been no official statement yet.
We fought for border enforcement for years. No one told Fair anything?
Actually, Christina from the opposite side just reached out. Said there's something I should pass to you directly.
Huh. From her? What's the odds?
There's something brewing in Homeland Security that you might want to look into.
Homeland Security.
Yeah.
Is this tied to what's happening right now in this country? Some kind of immigrant policies?
Yeah, it could be, yeah. She didn't go into full details.
What she's wanting to do with this? Gather everything. I want every piece of information of this. Come back to me later.
Understood. I'll get together first soon.
Thank you for the gift, Ellen. I really appreciate it. You are really my best buddy. Ako berpikir untuk mengolah pemberianmu ini untuk menjadi konsumsi hangat publik masyarakat kita.
Kamu tahu kan kalau rakyat tahu isi draft itu, mereka akan panik.
Kekacauan adalah suara, dan suara itu akan menyeimbangkan kekuasaan mereka. Ellie, let them bark. I just lit the fire. This is what Homeland Security is really focusing on now. If the firewall breaks from the inside, this is going to get complicated. We should get a protest letter. We'll prepare our response accordingly. I want you to include the latest stats, and we're going to put it right in the desk with numbers they can ignore.
Sure. Anything else I can do?
Emphasize that we're expecting their leadership to protect our national borders. And don't forget to make a copy of it. I want it on record.
I will proceed accordingly. And should I call our love list?
Yeah, the best lobbyist that can get us away into the building. He'll deliver our demands into the office. And I'll also make it clear we all still have the same legal concerns and national security concerns.
Perhaps we should start shaping the narrative.
You know what? That might actually work too. There's the hashtag, the one that's ours. Hashtag defund the border or something along the lines. We have all to persuade. Alright, we're not the ones writing the laws, but we sure know how to push to the pen. They make the decisions, we make them decide faster. With data, media, timing, and pressure. That's how we win public opinion. We're the perfect voice for our border security.
Understood.
Good. We'll see what comes of it.
Come in.
Good morning, Mr. President. Apologies for taking your time.
Don't mention it. Have a seat, please. Saya sudah membaca surat dari Fair. Mereka meminta peninjauan ulang, bukan? Apa maksudnya nih, Bu Nelvi? Bagaimana saya bisa membaca draft ini dari media? Bukan dari mejaku secara langsung. Coba jelaskan. Sejak kapan Anda menjadi pembuat keputusan tunggal di pemerintahan ini? Telingaku sudah siap mendengarkan.
Tapi dihantam dari segala arah, Pak. Negara ini butuh tindakan dan bukan cuma janji.
Cepat bukan berarti sembrono. Anda dan saya juga tahu apa konsekuensi yang akan dihasilkan dari hasil-hasil ini. Cepat bukan berarti sembrono. Anda dan saya juga tahu apa konsekuensi yang akan dihasilkan dari hasil-hasil ini.
Baik Pak, saya minta maaf terkait hal ini. Untuk itu, berikut ini adalah revisi draft dari tim kami semalam, lebih sistematis, dan kami tonjolkan sisi keamanan tanpa terdengar basis.
Tambahkan verifikasi berbasis daerah asal, distribusi anggaran lokal, dan pelatihan integrasi. Lalu ubah bagian ini. Pendistribusian anggaran federal tanpa pengendalian dan kontrol akan keuangan tersebut itu bisa menjadi bumerang untuk kita.
Baik Pak, akan kami tambahkan pengawasan dan 2 tingkat dan audit per kuartalnya. Saya sungguh meminta maaf atas seluruh kekacauan yang terjadi. Kami telah merevisi kebijakan sesuai kondisi realitas.
Apakah ini bentuk bahwa Departemen of Homeland Security itu tunduk pada tekanan fair?
Hal ini merupakan tanggung jawab pada negara, pada warga negara, dan pada manusia yang datang untuk mencari kehidupan. Tidak ada yang siap menghadapi suara 300 juta rakyat, apalagi jika semua bicara dalam satu waktu. Dan di antara teriakan mereka, aku harus memutuskan siapa yang layak didengar. Apakah aku bangga dengan caraku? Belum tentu. Tapi hari ini aku belajar bahwa menjadi pemimpin bukan soal benar atau salah, tapi tentang siapa yang berani berdiri bahkan saat seluruh negeri ingin kamu jatuh. Baik, mungkin sekian konferensi pers hari ini. Terima kasih.
Tapi Bu, tunggu sebentar.
As the President of the United States of America, I hereby signing the approval of Executive Order number 1716298, valid until today.
Satu tanda tangan, ratusan ribu nasib berubah. Tapi tidak semua harapan bisa disaring. Kita akan lihat berapa lama pagar ini bisa menahan badai.
So, do you have any comments on the executive order that was signed by President Irfan yesterday?
We welcome the government's good intentions to strengthen national security.
However, this executive order is not firm enough. FAIR urges the creation of policies that address illegal immigrations more boldly and consistently. We will continue to monitor the implementation of this policy.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words,
For all Donald Trump's push for peace, Russia is not holding back on its attacks on Ukrainian cities. Here in Kryvyi Rih, Volodymyr Zelensky's hometown, at least 4 killed in an overnight strike on a hotel. But there is some progress on the political front. Talks planned for next week, again in Saudi Arabia, this time between the US and Ukraine.
I think it'll be a good meeting. I really do believe that. Hopefully that'll be a good signal to the Russians, because they have been proactive too in wanting to get something done here. And I think that's what the president, that's who he is. He's a peace through strength president.
Just in case his peace through strength presidency favours Russia, Europe is making its own plans, agreeing at an emergency summit in Brussels to free up around 650 billion euros to spend on defence. And in the US, Britain's Defence Secretary John Healey met with his US counterpart, who expressed his gratitude that the UK and Europe were stepping up. Like his president, Valentin Koshelenko is from Kryvyi Rih. Now in the United States, he volunteers to support Ukraine from afar, but fears Trump's rush for peace.
He pressed Ukraine to end this war in a faster way, but this is for Ukraine that means capitulation, basically.
All Ukrainians have a dream, real dream, to have a peace in Ukraine. But the second dream is to have guarantees that this kind of massacre mass wouldn't be happen again.
Their future in the United States is also not guaranteed, after reporting on Thursday that Donald Trump might revoke the temporary legal status of Ukrainian refugees. The White House says no decision has been made at this time on the status of Ukrainians in the United States, but that surely means that it's under review, adding uncertainty to the lives of tens of thousands who fled their homeland. But that's what this presidency so far has been all about, uncertainty in people's lives, in the markets, for the whole post-World War II world order. In the Oval Office, the torrent of signings of fresh executive orders continues, against the backdrop of a freshly appropriated Gulf of America poster. Donald Trump says he'll be visiting Saudi Arabia within the next 6 weeks. Whether he'll be meeting with Putin or Zelensky then, or both, still not clear. Diana Magnay, Sky News, Washington.
The world doesn't change overnight. It shifts slowly. Through a quiet decision behind desk, whispers between diplomats, and long debates that are never broadcast. 3 years since war broke out in the heart of Eastern Europe. 3 years since Ukraine stood alone, then together against unequal forces. Behind the scenes, the United States reached out, providing weapons, funds, hope. But even superpowers have limits. There are voices that are not heard amidst the clink of guns. The voices of veterans who miss the meanings of all the sacrifice. The voices of professors who remind us that foreign policy is not about empty morality, but a calculated interest. And in the center of the seat of power, a new president sits, elected not to continue the war, but to calm the storm at home. He looked at the numbers. He read the reports. He heard the clamor of a weary populace. And so America, for the first time in its modern history, decided to withdraw. Not because it lost, but because it knew that not all victories must be won in blood.
Mr. President, I've come to by your order.
Another 5 billion for Ukraine. Our infrastructure is not even doing well, and we need to send them more money.
Sir, if you stop now, Ukraine will collapse. Here, take a look at this graph.
This is not just a number that can be ignored. People are starting to ask where all the money is going, our tax money. We need to focus on the domestic issues right now. Who does what and how? I'm supposed to synthesize to confront chaos into command. But what if the inputs contradict? What if democracy demands contradiction?
I understand, sir, but it's more than just numbers. Ukraine needs us. For them, these are not just numbers, but hope. Without our help, Ukrainian territory will definitely be controlled by Russia, and it will worsen the situation in Europe, even for us.
For 3 years, we have been providing assistance to them. At this point, I wonder if we are investing without any clear result. Bloodshed, money spent. Why should we step in?
This is not just to be a global hero, sir, but to maintain our role as a global stability force. Decisions have a long-term impact, and we have promised Ukraine we are giving them hope.
Is hope more important than reality? They are not asking us to be heroes, but partners.
Mr. President, if we retreat with our own alliance, Russia will further expand its influence, even taking away the loyalty of our alliance in NATO.
That is also my fear. But we must remember one thing. America does not always fight wars for the world. We have a responsibility to our people, and they want us to home.
So, what are you planning to do next, sir?
Divert attention. We reduce aid, but provide diplomatic support.
This will be a difficult decision, but I understand, sir. We will prepare an official statement.
Mr. Yoga, what's your comment about the Russia-Ukraine conflict that went viral in X this week?
Let me be clear. The United States has no intention of prolonging a war that has no clear diplomatic horizon. We are not abandoning Ukraine, but we will not bleed indefinitely for a conflict that demands European leadership. The time has come for recalibration.
Good morning, class.
Good morning, Professor.
I'm very sorry for being late. So it's really cold, so I got a little fever today, but it's okay. So today we're going to study about geopolitical realism and also Ukraine. Oh my God, that's so interesting. So the question is not whether we want Ukraine to win, but whether the United States should pay the price for that victory.
have been saying this since 2014. Expanding NATO to the east a provocation. It is not only a mistake, but also geopolitical blindness.
But, Professor, don't we have a moral obligation? Doesn't democracy have to defend democracy?
Morality without power is rhetoric. In international politics, states do not act out of morality. States act to survive. Realism teaches us to separate will from capacity.
But Professor, if the US pulls out now, what does that do to our credibility as the world leader? Are we not showing weakness?
Is maintaining an image more important than domestic stability? Hundreds of billions have been spent. Meanwhile, our people are struggling to pay rent and buy insulin.
So the solution is that we sit back and let Russia swallow Ukraine?
The solution is diplomacy. Balance of power. We can help without pouring the gasoline on the fire.
Professor, don't you worry that something like this could be misinterpreted because it's support for authoritarianism?
I myself am not a supporter of authoritarianism. I am in favor of limitation. If we continue to act like the world's policeman, it will be tiring, like the Britain before World War II. The empire fell not because of the external enemies, but because they had too much weight on their shoulder. If you want to spread democracy, start at home. Build education, help the economy. Then, the world will follow our example, not because we force it, but because they want it.
Okay.
We continue later.
Thank you, Professor.
You're welcome.
Professor,
Yes.
you know your opinion is not popular. Many people will call you a traitor.
In the world of ideas, the truth is very popular. But that doesn't mean it's wrong. It is in space like this, amongst the piles of books and youthful idealism, that big ideas are debated. And sometimes, the least popular are the most needed. From Washington, now, National Security Committee. Thank you. We invite you as a guest speaker at hearing on the police withdrawing military support from Ukraine. They never listened when the warning was first delivered, but history has a way of making us hear what we refuse to hear.
You've seen the clip. What was your first thought hearing Secretary Yoga say, "We will not bleed indefinitely"?
It's a sentence every soldier understands too well. We are bleed. But the real question is, for what? I don't blame him. I blame the logic that brought us here. The idea that you can find peace with bullets, then walk away once it gets inconvenient.
So you're saying this isn't about withdrawal, but timing.
Exactly. Withdrawal is inevitable in any war. But if you disengage with reflection without repairing what your presence altered, then you're not ending something. You're just escaping it.
Some would argue the US has done enough, financially, militarily, politically.
We've done plenty. But enough? Enough would have been planning a peaceful exit before the first aid package. Enough would have been involving civil society, veterans, regional allies from the beginning. War is loud. Peace takes conversations, thousands of them.
What would you like to see from the government now?
Dialogue, clarity, listening, and yes, rebalancing. Not just budgets, but priorities.
That's a tall order.
It always is. But when soldiers come home, they need something more than medals. They need to believe it meant something. And the people we left behind, they deserve more than silence.
And your role now?
We speak, we write, we attend hearings. Some of us advise. Some just sit here, drink tea, and talk to anyone willing to listen. Who does what and how? We are feedback. Loud, imperfect, necessary. When leaders forget the ground, we remind them with a megaphone. For what? I don't blame him. I blame the logic that brought us here. The idea that you can find peace with bullets, then walk away once it gets inconvenient.
Sorry for interrupting, Mr. President. Secretary of Yoga is here.
Mr. President, I understand why you called me here.
Have a seat, please. Yoga, you've stirred the pot, no question about it. And now with drinking what's been brewed.
I said what it needs to be said. We can't fight a war without an end, and without our people behind it.
So tell me, where are we? Not in Paris, not in press headline, but here, in this room.
We've made a moral and strategic pivot. What's missing is a narrative cohesion and a plan that translates invasion into doctrine. And domestic readiness. You can't redirect the war effort abroad without compensating for its impact at home. We need budget redistribution frameworks, civil preparedness for reintegration, even PR strategy for social stability. Europe is already in shock. Berlin wants clarity. Poland wants guarantees. Kyiv calling it betrayal in harsher tones.
Then we stop the bleeding, here and now. Tonight, I'm calling the crisis room. I want the Secretary of State and the Veteran of Peace. We need voices that don't wear badges. Exactly. And Professor Mersheimer. Let's put policy, principle, and people in the same room. For once. If tradition keeps us in war, I will build new walls.
Mr. President, Mr. Yoga.
Mr. President, Mr. Yoga.
Thank you for coming, ladies and gentlemen. We need all points of view before making a final decision.
I didn't come to convince, just to wind us. That consideration is still
possible.
You all know why we are here. The world think we're backing out. The people don't know what to believe. This room will decide what happened next.
Mr. President, our allies now are shaken. Germany has called twice today. Zelensky are requesting for clarification, and domestically, our veterans communities are holding in our 5 major cities: Atlanta, Chicago, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and Detroit. This isn't just a quiet pivot. This is a storm.
Professor, tell me, what do you see?
3 things, Mr. President. First, don't call this withdrawal. Call it strategic redirection. Secondly, your exits to European responsibility sharing make them accountable. And the last one, make it public. Control transparency builds trust domestically and internationally.
Strategic. Make it more public. And from the moral ground?
Give the people something to hold on to. If we leave a vacuum, fill it with peace building, with reinvestment in diplomacy, with veterans helping shape post-conflict planning. This war isn't just about weapons. It's about who we become after.
Then we all agree to do this, not just with strategy, but with soul. Here's what we'll do. Professor, you will lead the initial drafting with our policy advisory unit. Work with state. To Secretary Yoga, coordinate the language with NATO protocols. I want every sentence tight and strategic. Right. And lastly, Miss Edie, you will review the draft from the veterans' lens. I want the soul, this nation in that document, not just its spine. That's it. We reconvene in 48 hours. This won't just be another memo. This will be executive order 14391, and it will divine us. And therefore, I hereby adjourn this meeting starting from today.
We need to reward the Section 2 military drawdown. Might sound like a retreat, but to suggest here force recalibration, it implies strength, not surrender.
Good. I'm tired of being told every pose is weakness. Words matter.
May I? Here, add in full consultation with NATO partners and affect allies. It reframes this as a strategic, not impulsive. We're not isolating, we're rebalancing.
Exactly. The framing will protect us from being portrayed as abandoning Ukraine.
I still want to keep the line about Veterans Peace Initiative. We already briefed Jake's team. For many Americans, that paragraph is more powerful than the whole military section.
Let them. Let them. I didn't come here to win everyone. I come here to stop the bleeding abroad and at home. when the war becomes the goal itself. Someone has to say enough. Let's give the country an answer. Even if it's not the one they expected. My fellow American citizen, today I sign the Executive Order number 14391. A realignment, not a retreat. A recognition that America's role in the world must be measured, not endless. 3 years of war have shown our limits, not courage, but of clarity. This new policy shifts us from arms shipment to diplomacy, from escalation to recalibration, with our NATO allies, not in spite of them, and with our veterans leading new peace effort, not just remembered as warriors. We honor Ukraine's struggle, but we cannot export peace by fueling endless war. We choose to lead with diplomacy because we believe the world deserves more than weapons.
Mr. President, what about Russia's message here? Isn't this a green light for them?
Russia watch everything, but the message is for our children. That their future won't be built on battlefield, we can no longer justify.
The world is never truly silent, but sometimes we learn to listen in quiet.
There are moments when state have to step back and the world step closer.
Professor Mersheimer returns to her lectures from behind a laptop screen. Her words remain sharp, but now there are pauses between arguments, spaces for reflection, spaces for change. On another screen, two foreign ministers speak, the United States and Ukraine.
Oh, hello, Mr. Irfan. How have you been? Okay, good. I really looking forward for your came to visit to Washington. I'll be meeting you there. Okay, see ya.
Words once forged in the fire of conflict now begin to rebuild the bridge of diplomacy. Not perfect, but enough to start again.
Ma'am, we got a letter from the veteran to Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. President.
At his desk, the president opens a letter, not from Congress, not from the press, but from a veteran. Ink on worn paper. Thank you for hearing us.
Affair. Sincerely, Jake.
And down a quiet road, a veteran returns home, not with medals, but with old photographs and memories that never left. She's not happy, but she is at peace, because for once, her voice was part of the fight. And sometimes, victory doesn't mean winning. It means enduring and staying human. And just this once, the world made room for peace, even if only for a moment.
Fill my heart with song and let me sing forever. Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, darling, kiss me. Fill my heart with song. Let me sing forever. You are